All right, everybody, welcome to Deep Dive Sessions. My name is Mplomo Taurira. Thank you so much for stopping by. You could have been anywhere, you could have been watching anything, doing anything, but you chose to spend time with us this evening or whatever time you're watching this. So thank you very much. And my deal with you is that if you actually watch this episode and find value in it, please drop a like, comment below anything that you find fascinating, and sub to the channel. So today we're talking about podcasting, everything you need to know before you start your podcast. Today I'm here with somebody that will introduce himself. Let me not make the introduction for him. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Tabz.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, easy, man.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, I was about to say your name and surname. And I'm like, hey, let me just call you with the name they call you with. Yeah, man.
So introducing myself, yes, I'm Taboka Chengeta. Everyone calls me Tabz.
For sure.
Founder and managing director of Good Vision. And yeah, my position at Good Vision is creative director and managing director. I work with a team of 3 in total, including myself. Malika Williams, who is the director of photography, and Wings, who is assistant to director of photography, who you of course know because we shoot the deep dive.
Yeah. Was that rehearsed, dog? Somebody just like, hey man, but that was good, man. I've never heard it from you actually, you saying it like that. But anyway, man, where did we meet? You and
UB, of course.
UB. This was like second year or something like that, eh?
For sure.
Yeah.
With Dibs, Joe, Killer Pass,
round table type of thing, spread, cheesy,
sure.
yeah, that kind of, yeah. All right, man. So podcasting, when did you start this? Because you started your own thing. I remember that. You remember that logo you used to have there
with the glasses?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
I saw you and I'm like, it's pretty clean what you're doing there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yo, let me hit up this man. Yeah. Actually, I saw it before, like a while back, but I'll tell you the story. I haven't told you the story actually.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But either way, of course, I started off as a musician, and in being a musician and I guess a content creator, I ended up doing my own podcast, which was called Revision, which was under Good Vision. Good Vision, I didn't necessarily have ironically, vision for it. And I was just doing a podcast. That's how I learned how to do a podcast, by doing my own with multiple microphones, multiple cameras, learning how to do the editing. Then I ran into TK, who hit me up because I had a music video with Vizo. Yeah. So then that's how
El Clasico.
Yeah,
I watched it. It's pretty dope.
Thank you.
The visuals,
Yeah, I edited it myself, which was why TK got me on. So in the interview, like he got me on for an interview. So then that was the first time him and I met. Then he was asking me about content creation and how I learned how to edit. I guess he liked what he heard. So then after that interview, he was like, yo, you want to do something? And I was like, I'd bet. I was even willing to do it for free. And he was offering to pay. So then after that, we created the Juice 2.0. And, ever since then, people started hitting me up because of
When was this though?
This was last year, March.
Yeah.
So we met in February, and then we had some episodes which will never be up because they were terrible. And then the first episode was with Kutlo and Dilemma. Yeah. And that's where it started off. I started with a partner named DOP Stan. I don't know if it's Dope Stan, he'll forgive me. Yeah. But him and I were working together. DOP, I don't know, Dope, director of photography. Yeah. So I was working with him, and then he helped me out in terms of providing another camera. Dips, who you know from UB, he was helping me out with another camera, sourcing it. And that's how I managed to do it. I didn't even own a camera. And at the time, Gabs FM was providing the audio because we were shooting in-house. But I already had experience with recording audio. And then eventually I was using, I started working with you, right? And then I was using actually Wings' microphone and my own personal microphone I'd use to record.
Oh, damn.
To record the audio for the deep dive, right? And then inevitably I managed to buy these microphones. And then I was using these to shoot the podcasty version of the Juice 2.0 with TK. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That was a lot, dog. That was a lot. Anyway, okay, so this happened in March for you. Because I remember also we started shooting last year, like March,
March,
that same time.
For sure.
And this was all self-taught. You didn't learn this like formally at school and everything.
No, I studied marketing at school. Yeah, so I was just a guy.
Pretty interesting. But were you doing this? Because I never heard you talk about this. Like by round table and be like, yo guys, by the way,
I mean, I did music, right?
Oh, yeah.
So in a sense, that was content creation. And by extension, the way I look at the way I was writing music and making beats and making music videos.
Yeah.
I just felt, I felt I could apply this to other aspects of my life. So I wanted to do a podcast. I was like, how do I do it? I was working with Wayne, the maestro. He was teaching me how to do like the mixing audio. Wings was also helping me with mixing. He was actually the guy doing the audio for Revision Podcast. I was behind the camera. I was more of like a director. But then from that's when I figured it out. I never like to say I'm self-taught because I don't really think you can just like self-teach. It's always from somewhere, right? So just from experience of working with people who knew more than me and also just YouTube, that's how I figured it out.
Bet. So let's talk about podcasting now. With your experience and with a little bit of what I know with podcasting, what is the first thing that somebody needs to know? I want to start a podcast today. What should they start thinking about? For me, I would say you have to figure out what you're going to talk about, like figure out your niche. But for you, what is that?
I mean, I guess on a philosophical level, you need to figure out who you are, what you really want. Is there something that you really want to do? And I think from there, everything else will just trickle down.
On us now.
Socrates.
Yeah, good.
And I think it just trickles down into you expressing yourself, because this podcasting thing or any art you create, I look at it as an extension of who you are. Sometimes I think people get too much into, I need a result, I need money, or what, let me do this, let me figure that out. But I think if you really hone in on who you are, you figure out a niche, because of things that you're interested in which other people are not interested in, just by extension of people being themselves. So it's like, if you can figure out who you are, I think that's a great starting point. But of course, in the more practical level, identifying a niche who you want to talk to. Every time I talk to people in terms of inquiring or doing a podcast, I always ask, who are you trying to reach out to? And then people are always like, everyone. And I'm like, you can't reach out to everyone. It's like, even if you try, even if you think it's a good model, reaching out to everyone is like reaching out to no one. So figuring out who you want to talk to, who you want, what you want to talk about, right? And then figuring out a way in which it's unique. So I think those are the great things. Of course, the logistical aspects of the quality of the content, where you're going to shoot, how you're going to shoot, how often you're going to release. And I think that's a great starting point. If you can figure out the logistics and what you want to do, you're pretty solid.
What do you think matters most, visuals or audio in a podcast?
So I'd say like, I'll give an example with like music and music videos. So I think people get too boxed into the idea of making a song or an album. Really, if you think about it, music is like an excuse to make a music video, because the music video is what really pushes your brand. Most songs blew up after the fact of the music video because of the impact the visuals have. So as much as podcasting did exist as pure audio, back in the day, I think people started recognizing it in the same breath of, okay, well, if I want to make my brand bigger, visuals is another level to that. So
people need to connect with me.
Because especially like it's hard listening. I don't lie. As even the podcast guy, like it's hard listening to someone for an hour straight without distraction. In fact, people like to listen to podcasts while doing something else. So it's like, to keep people captivated in terms of watching the stuff, it's like, it's really good to have visuals.
Engage more senses, essentially.
Exactly. Like, it's just another dimension of it to it being engaging. Because at this point, like podcasting, with the example, is like an excuse. Like, people have microphones, but it's really like a YouTube channel, and it's like an excuse to have a conversation. Like, what really is the difference between like a girl doing like a get ready with me and she's talking about stories with and without a microphone? It's almost the same thing. It's just, it's almost an excuse at this point. To the extent where, without explaining too much, that like sometimes corporate gigs that want the podcast setup just because of it being a podcast, which is literally just the microphones and stuff. And to the extent where I've made quotations of just the setup, but they're recording everything else and they're using like, wired mics and stuff. It's crazy.
Just the setup. Nuts.
Like not like they're not even recording with the microphones.
Crazy. So if I let me take you back. So we started Deep Dive 2021, February 16th, our first episode. was a live Facebook live. It was a Facebook live.
Yeah.
And we had like an iPhone 8 with a ring light, and the audio was terrible. The visuals were also like, just below average, or just, I could say average, just on looking at the grand scheme of things of how people are doing it, because it was an iPhone. So it wasn't bad, but the audio was terrible. And people still watched it. People still like an hour. It was like an hour long. There's like 1.1 or something K people that watched it. I think also just because of the novelty, people were like excited about, because I was telling people about it. And then after that, we brought in a team. We started shooting, and when you came into the picture, with the whole vision and everything, and I must say, I think you were one of the people that convinced me to get on YouTube. Yeah. Remember the conversation we had? I was like, it was a debate. At about 11 weeks. It was a debate. It was like 2 weeks or something. We went back and forth because I was afraid of getting on YouTube without building a huge brand first, because I wanted to leverage.
It's very common amongst, even to this day, amongst clients. It's
most definitely. And then when you came in, there was that significant difference and growth also with that. And it's something that I wanted to touch on, because I think that to a great degree, the quality, just having something that looks good, like the lighting looking good, the audio being clear.
For sure.
Having, just being serious about what you're doing. I mean, both you and I are wearing a shirt. We look a bit formal. It shows that we're a little bit serious about what we're doing. Yeah. I think there has to be that. But there's also people that do it in a totally different way, who are, relaxed and flops and whatever, Crocs. They're sitting with their sweatpants and they're just shooting. And I'm not talking about anybody. I'm not talking about nobody. And people still love what they do,
No, for sure.
People still go for what they do. So I think it goes back to those 2 points. First of all, you need to have something that looks good and that can attract people, and also know who you're speaking to. Yeah. Because we definitely know our audience and who we're trying to reach. Yeah. So talk to me about equipment, because this is something that I get a lot. And to be honest, it's a question that's hard for me to answer. Talk to me about equipment. How much is it for just like the setup?
For like my setup is probably around 60 bands, I guess. But it doesn't have to be.
They don't know what 60 bands is.
60,000.
Just went
but it doesn't have to be.
But
because like I use a MacBook Air, that was like 16.
Yeah.
That was already a cutting off 16,000. I think everything else, possibly maybe like 40,000 for a multiple camera setup, but it doesn't have to be that deep. Yeah. But of course, like, to break it down, of course, you need each camera. So in terms of picking out a camera, the way I've done it is, I've tried figuring out a way to make it cost effective, but also look very good. So a standard camera, like say like a A7S3, right, a Sony, it would be probably like 30,000. An R5 would be like 40,000, 50,000. Yeah. But my setup is about 10K because I use an M50. So the hack about it is that the cheaper cameras have smaller sensors, but it doesn't necessarily mean the quality is less. The expensive cameras are full frame cameras, so the sensors are bigger. So in that regard, a mirrorless camera like the M50 has an APS-C camera, which is a small sensor in the camera. But then I have an adapter behind the lens that makes the frame look big, because the smaller the sensor, the smaller the frame. So a full frame camera will have a bigger image, and then a small sensor camera will have a smaller image. So I have an adapter which increases the size, and also has a piece of glass which increases the amount of light. So usually the issue with video, why it's always looking dusty in people's footage and whatever, it's because they really struggle with light. At the end of the day, a camera, that's all it's doing. It's working around the physics of light. So then adding more light with the adapter, and then having a good lens, 50mm lens at 1.8 aperture being basically the hole that allows for light to come in. 1.8, the smaller the number, the bigger the hole, which means it's more light. So then the adapter brings it down to 1.2. Of course, it's not a real 1.2. It's kind of a fake 1.2 because it's just an adapter. It's not really increasing the size of the hole, right? Okay. It adds more light. So in scenarios where you have a low light situation, like, TK will be at an event, there's not enough light, or even here in Stanbic, there's not enough light. it helps in terms of balancing the noise ratio so that there's less noise and it's a cleaner image. And that's through not necessarily the camera, but through the additional. So going through the equipment, I did more research into finding out, okay, how can this be cost effective, but at the same time be good quality? And, you know, some people will just go out and buy like an R5, but now you have an R5, but you have a standard lens. My camera will probably beat that, even though your sensor's better, right? Because the lens is trash. Like you'll find a lot of photographers using the 50mm because it's a cheap lens, but it's very good, and you can attach it to most Canon cameras, which are EF lenses. So it's also like, so you have to like really figure out what can you afford and how can you optimize for the best quality. Yeah. Of course, there are trade-offs. There are definitely trade-offs with these cameras. They don't shoot 60 frames at 4K and stuff like that, you know. But at the end of the day, I'm doing what is looking good because I care more about the results of this thing moving and it being good than it like, oh yeah, my equipment is 100,000, pay me 10,000 a month. Like I don't think there's any value in that. I wanted something that looks good and actually provides results. Yeah, I feel
that. So if you're to scale down, if somebody wants to start their own pod right now, they want the quality that they've seen. You know, let me not name names, but they want the quality. What is that in terms of audio, lighting, camera?
Okay,
I mean, we can do it on an iPhone, right? We can do it
you can use a phone, right?
Yeah, and then
if you really want, then I started without a camera, right?
Yeah,
you can borrow cameras. Like I think a big thing about me is goodwill. Like I'm just cool with everyone. So when I was like, yo, can I borrow a camera? Can I do this? Everyone was pretty chill, you know? So if you really want to squeeze it, I'd say borrow cameras. People are willing. Like photographers are not using their cameras every day and they're not shooting video with it, right? So most of the time their cameras are just chilling. So you can borrow equipment, right? But if you want to spend, it might be a bit tough, right? I don't think there is a way to do it in a way in which, like, there are always trade-offs. Like you got to figure out what you want. Like, are you okay with having are you okay with only shooting 24 frames per second forever? Like, are you cool with, you know, this camera maybe, I don't know, doesn't shoot 4K? There are very cheap alternatives, but there are always trade-offs, and you have to be prepared for the trade-offs. Like, for example, like I have these lights, right? Because I really care about creating a light. Like I care about like the physics of lights and creating a lighter environment on sets. But like these are not the most expensive lights. Like someone else will say, oh, my lights are 10K, an aperture lights or something, right? Because maybe they care more about being able to control the light, being able to control the temperature of the light, having a light dome which is big, having a powerful light. Maybe they're shooting outdoors. It varies. Just do like extensive research. But like if you really want to squeeze, it can essentially be free because you cannot borrow the equipment.
Borrow these things,
like there are people who could probably borrow this equipment from me. They've just never asked. Right? Because it's like, I'm a cool guy, and if you have a right proposition, I think you're cool too, I could probably borrow it to you, you know? And I have all the equipment, but some people just never ask.
And I think another thing also
not that you should ask. Hey, this is not free.
It's definitely not free. Another thing to it also, I think, is also, you know, once you have that equipment, especially if this is like what you're doing, you have to have it like insured so that you make sure that you don't, you know, this is what's bringing money in and all that. So I wanted us to also move a bit forward now. Let's talk about people. Obviously, this podcast where it's just you talking to the camera, sharing your ideas and whatever. You can do that on Spotify. You can just have it audio. It doesn't have to be like that. And then there's podcast where it's like what we do, a deep dive, and we have guests, you know. So there's those nuances now. Now you have to go and find guests. Now you have to like build those relationships. And I wanted us to talk about different things that make, you know, a podcast. You know, what make a good podcast. And I want to talk about, first of all, finding good guests. Obviously, this is something that I do. I think for me, one of the biggest things was you have to really go out to meet people. You have to go to events. You have to go to places.
A lot of networking.
You have to network a lot, like extensively. Especially if like you're starting out, people don't actually know about you. Even when they know about you, you just need to keep on, because you just get more quality. You just build more quality relationships. And one thing that has always worked for me was, I don't know, man. I think I've never really gone up to someone and be like, yo, you know, I don't just come with the pitch immediately. We try to build a relationship, and then we make sure that from
how
there.
are you?
Yeah, like,
Nice
how are
day.
you, man? How are your
Nice
dogs?
shoes.
That kind of thing, you know? And I think there's also strategy to it, you know, because I think one thing about having a podcast is it's almost that thing that puts you, it's your foot in the door, almost, like, especially in this, let me talk about this industry of business. For me, it's worked in that massive way. I remember an event that I attended in Travel Lodge, May 30. I was sitting down on one of the guys I know, Kes, who was like, yo, let me introduce you to somebody that would be a great guest on the show. He took me to the lady that was hosting the event. You know, the one who was speaking, actually the main speaker of the event. He took me like through the channels, and then we had a conversation. We said she became a guest on the show. Her name was Alakanani Drilling. So I'm really talking about that. Like, you really have to just put yourself out there. For you, what are some of the things that, you know, you've done revision before? And you've done it with more than just you. You've done it with other people. How were you able to like build those?
Yeah, I mean, my networking, like I always say, like I think sometimes networking, and it might be controversial, but like networking to an extent is overrated, because if you have nothing of value to provide, it's like you're just talking to people, really.
Exactly.
You know, so of course, like I said, I was already a musician, so I remember there was an episode where we had like Frost, we had Flex the Ninja, we had Brian BC, and of course, like some people might be like, it's Frost. Maybe I saw him at Choppies or something, even though he's a very big celebrity. It's like, you know, being able to have something of value, which was music, people tend to gravitate towards you, even if they don't necessarily need something from you. I've never had a song with Frost. We've never been like, yo, let's make music or anything. But stuff like that just works. Even, I mean, at the time, even though I stopped revision because I was getting caught up with everything else, even like other celebrities through me being a musician were like, okay, this guy has goodwill. I like this guy, he's cool and he's good at something. It's like, for some reason, people will be keen to hop on stuff, you know, just because of the value you provide generally in the world. You know, so for me, that was generally my technique, I guess.
You gotta have something you're doing.
Yeah, it was just organic, you know. Now it's even easier because people look at what I'm doing now as more valuable. It's like, especially for me, because I'm meeting just like you, you're meeting a guest every week, essentially, right? A new entrepreneur every week. I'm doing that like maybe 4 times a week now, because I'm shooting you, then I'm shooting TK, then I'm shooting Hana, then I'm shooting like Agatha, whatever. You know, I'm meeting people all the time. So it's like, now they know what I do. Like, it's evidence. It's like, oh, you guys do this. I'm interested in doing this every time. It's like a badge on my sleeve when I'm around, which is different from the music, because I had to tell them. You know, it wasn't like, oh, you do this. Like, it's like I had to actually explain that I'm a musician. Then there's always the concerns, like, is he good? And now they have to find out I'm good. But now it's like, they're already here. They've already seen the content. It's much easier now to network.
They know what time it is.
Now that's why I even made cards, because I was networking so much. Like people would always ask for the number. And it's like, here's my card.
Let's go. And that was pretty juicy with the card.
Like I just had to, because it was getting that much. Like meeting people all the time. Sometimes like TK will have a thing where he shoots like 5 people in the same day, and we're at events. And it's like, and we're at an event. People are passing by. They're like, oh, you guys do this thing. It's like, it was insane. Like, having a podcast is a great networking strategy, honestly.
And you actually answered part of the point I wanted us to go into, actually, like the value of just having a podcast. I think people don't understand, especially because it's we're also going to talk about stuff like monetization, so you guys better stick around. So that, like, having a podcast, like the value of it, because especially in your end, I can only talk from my experience, but you are shooting for more than just me and shooting for other guys. You know, so what is that value? I know the value for me, like it's been insane. Like, like it's life changing, to be honest. It's totally life changing. Like, even it's crazy. Just last night, an email came in. It's like, hey man, There's a former guest that came on the show. He's like, I'd like you to attend 1, 2, 3. This is a meeting. It's a high-level meeting. It's just invite only. And I'm coming to all of these invite-only meetings. He's like, can you please send me your email, 1, 2, 3? And I'm like, oh, definitely. This is something that I would like to attend and just learn about. And it's actually something I've been researching upon. So I think the leverage is just insane.
Yeah, it's
but
crazy.
I want to hear it from your end, especially since you're seeing what's going on with everybody else.
I mean, okay, I'll
like to somebody who's not convinced, like, okay, I understand you can start a podcast, but like to somebody who's not convinced to start a podcast, like.
Okay, all right. So to broaden it, I'll say content in general, but because podcasting has a unique way of, presenting itself. So for example, right, the networking thing, I think that's self-explanatory. You're literally bringing on guests, assuming your podcast is one like that. Maybe your podcast is you as alone, and you're a psychologist, and now you're breaking down psychology every week. That could be you. But in terms of bringing guests on, or for you, it's even crazier because you have guests and an audience. That could help so much in networking. And what you're experiencing as an individual, right, is stuff that would help for other brands too. Because it's like, say for, like, and I'm getting to my point, like, say for a small business, right? They may struggle with probably being seen as reliable or real or authentic or what have you. But now when they're associated with something that's actually living and breathing and talking, it's very hard for a graphic design in form of a flyer, in form of a profile, in form of what, to express or communicate that it's real. But having someone talk and say, this is me, I'm putting my face out there, I'm a real person you can hit up on Facebook, I'm not AI. It's crazy and helps authenticate your brand, and then position yourself better, because it's like the same way with a graphic designer. If I was a graphic designer, I'd always tell brands like, oh, graphic design makes your brand look more authentic and people will have more trust with it. Like, it'll be more trustworthy. Like, having a real person talk and you're listening to this person, and that's the premise of this podcast, helps in terms of doing that. Because if, say for example, a brand that made chicken, right? Like, you're seeing pictures of chicken, it's not the same. But now you're seeing people like talk about chicken, a real person, like someone maybe. It's like, I wanna Mumpuluki. Like, like, yo, this guy, I know this guy. He actually does this. And then also beyond that, now it's being published. Now people are making comments, they're liking it, they're sharing it. It gives some sort of validation to this thing is actually real and people like it. There's a number you can see of how many people support this thing, assuming it's doing well. And it's like, oh, I can actually support this because this is something that's real. And as a competitive strategy, now it separates you from everyone else who's not doing that. It's like, let's say you're just a guy, right? For you to ask for example, Mr. Mohobe, right? I'm sure he's rejecting people all the time because they're just guys. But now you have like a solid excuse and validation to say, oh, this guy has a platform where he talks about business. I'm interested in this. Even if you had like 50 subscribers, the fact that, you've had all these guests also is like proof. And you have documented proof online that you're pushing every week, just proving to the world that I'm authentic, I'm real.
And sometimes it's not even about the numbers. It's just about the documentation, like the proof that's on the ground. Like, it's where it's just undeniable. Where you see
this guy did this with that person, like putting it out there. If YouTube gets deleted, it's rough.
But like,
you can always check, that you did all of these things, and it's right there. Like, there's so many good benefits of it. Of course, also like, money-wise, I'll always talk about how you can do content marketing for other brands the same way, like, you've experienced it firsthand as an individual who's a guy. Like, you're being recognized in public, people trust you more, they like what you do, you're getting invited to stuff. The same thing can happen to a product or a brand that you're trying to push beyond you, because they might have maybe the money, but they don't necessarily have the personality, the platform. And then you can facilitate that on their behalf, especially if it's a product thing, because like a can of a drink doesn't have a mouth. It can never express itself. That's why, they'll be like putting taglines.
Like we do with Motswedi.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'll just be putting taglines to express the personality. But if you already have a real person with the personality, why not use them? And then of course, the amounts of money you make is going to be based on the amounts of value you provide, even if it's very low. At the end of the day, it's money. So yeah,
it's money, eh? So let's talk about this now, growing an audience. You know, I think like everybody's audience exists, to be honest, because it's interest. It's an interest metric. So if you're interested in this, you're definitely sure there's other people who are interested in this. The only issue is, how do you find your audience? Let's talk about that. How do you if you're starting a podcast right now, how do you help people find their audience and be able to set themselves out? You know, because the goal is to be seen.
Yeah.
You don't want to be talking to yourself, you know, and watch the video with your family members and then that's it.
Yeah.
You want people to be able to find the video and interact with it and be able to, you know, experience the video.
Yeah.
So how do people find their audience? Because I think that's a big question or a big stumbling block for people.
You mean find as in identify who they want to talk to, or find as in actually getting
the audience? How do people get that audience?
I mean, there are many ways they could do it, but of course, let's start with they should identify the people that they want to target.
Exactly.
One, and then and they can, in case they're wondering, you can do this simply just by asking yourself questions, starting at a broad scale, like who do you want to talk to? Let's say everyone. That's what people say, everyone. Okay, do you want it to be men and women? And then you say you can only pick one. And then it's like, who would you prefer? Maybe you do like, I don't know, you shave beards or something. Yeah. You say men, and then you say, okay, for every age, it's like,
red pill.
like, for every age, it's like, oh, not 3-year-olds. Then you start breaking it down. And then where? In Botswana? Oh, no, Pikwe. Okay, no, now you're in Pikwe, you shave beards, you're in Pikwe, that's your demographic, whatever, right? You can just cut it down by asking questions and then being intentional in terms of how you provide the content. So maybe if it need be, a way of talking, a way of presenting. Maybe you want a demographic of like business people who you don't swear, right? Maybe you want like a more rough kind of branding, and that's your
self-made
audience.
Only.
Yeah, so then it's like now you're swearing, bringing baddies, you know, you're doing everything, you know, drinking Hennessy, whatever. You can figure out in terms of the way you're presenting it, because that's the actual content and what you want to talk about. Because of course now you know your demographic, so you know what you want to talk about. So presentation is important. Even the set design is important. And if you want to get to the nitty-gritties, like even the color scheme, I mean, you're very lucky that this place is blue, because blue just
goes
like trustworthy.
Yeah.
It has a lot of psychological associations with the color. But you know, being intentional from even sets to how you talk on set, and then even camera placement. Do you want it to be up close? Do you want it to be further away? Do you want the sound to be very loud? Do you want it to be like a studio type of vibe? Do you want there to be natural sound, maybe outdoors? Do you want there to be some echo to show that it's a room? What have you, right? Because the person watching, who you're thinking about, may care about that, right? So that actually getting them, of course, you can just use promotional strategies, starting off with just the branding of the thing, right? So maybe in terms of even thumbnail design, because people are going to be observing the thumbnail on, you know, the recommendations list on YouTube.
Exactly.
Maybe use a specific color. Maybe if your value is determined by who you bring on, you put the guest's face very big in the thumbnail, what have you. Just communicating things in terms of the packaging of the product, you know, from thumbnail to the title, to the keywords, to the description. If the person who you want to target is reading this, how would they want to read it? What would they want you to say? And are you saying the right things to them? And are you saying things that can help them identify more people? So even bring it back to like the actual presentation. You know, every time someone watches, that's someone who can also bring on someone else similar to them. So saying stuff like, yo, please share this, you know, we'll appreciate the support. Or if the content is just good enough, you don't even need to say it, because if you've targeted them, they would want to share it to their friends, because assuming they're real friends.
It speaks to them.
Yeah, it's that community of people.
Definitely.
So I think that's the cost-effective way of doing it. And then of course, like actual promotional strategies, networking, just advertising,
most definitely,
you know, or just coming up with creative ways to come up with things like merchandising, and then maybe have like a QR code or something, like very creative ways of spreading it with tangible means, you know, whether that's merchandise or what have you. You can even do flyers if you're going crazy.
Yeah.
Like, guys, check out my item, you know, my podcast, or cards, what have you, you know, there's stuff like that.
And I think that's a big part, even just post-production. Sharing, like you have to share. I think people just think you're gonna post stuff on YouTube and then magic, you know, especially.
And I think that it's quite insane.
Like it's quite interesting because I see some, well, just one or two, but I think a lot of people just think that it's gonna post and then it's gonna do well.
Yeah, it also takes time.
It takes time, and you have to be very intentional. Also, our footprint on Botswana is not a lot on YouTube, so you have to really put it out there, and also seek to expand that footprint and make sure that it's also applicable to people that are outside of Botswana. I remember some of the people that watch Deep Dive were telling me to reduce on the Botswana, because, you know, actually this is somebody over outside of Botswana. Few people outside of Botswana and some in Botswana were telling me about that, like, so that this content is able to reach more people. And then the other thing that I think is key, the thing about a lot of podcasters is that they're creators, content creators, and content creators are creative people. So when it comes to getting on the camera and shooting, they're up. Everything is good. They shoot, they have the content, they know what to do, they know how to go to the nth time in terms of creativity. But I think the thing that matters most also is also just the consistency, because you can't create one video today and then come after 3 weeks, they're gonna replace you. Because if people are used to seeing you and then don't see you anymore, they get used to not seeing you, they're just gonna replace you, and it's easy to replace because there's just so much, there's so many alternatives. And then the other thing I think that I'm seeing is people, okay, here at Deep Dive we have like a team, you know, 7. You know,
Good Vision is an extension.
Exactly, Good Vision is an extension of that. You guys are here plugged in. We have like the graphics designer who does the flyers.
We have Gafo,
photographer. We have the one who's dealing with the ticketing. We have all these things, which is low key systems. You know, I don't like to call people systems, but it's systems in place that are helping us be able to create this on a week-to-week basis. Because this is something that a question I've gotten many times. How are you able to, you know, shoot on a weekly basis? Because I know it's difficult, you know, just setting the whole thing up. It must be difficult, but if you systemize it like that, of course, in the beginning, like, you know, it costs money to do everything. All of this costs money, but having those systems in place is really number one to flowing. And I also wanted to get your thoughts on it in terms of that, because I think creators need to have, for lack of a better word, like business acumen to their podcast.
For sure.
Yeah, like you need to treat it like a business, so that you know that just like your business, you know, you have to open at 7 o'clock in the morning. You have to be here at 6. If you said it's gonna be 6, it's gonna be 6. That kind of thing. And here at Deep Dive, I mean, the standards are quite high, and it's something that we try to work on a daily basis. So I wanted you to get into that.
Business acumen. We spoke about so many things, like systems.
The systems and the business acumen of just having a podcast. Just for sustainability. For the sake of sustainability.
I mean, I like to... Business is very important in terms of it being sustained, of course, because niggas need to eat. But it's like, I feel like sometimes with business, people get too wrapped up in the money-making process rather than providing value, right? So for starters, I'll just be like, okay, no, do you necessarily believe what you're providing is valuable to the people you're trying to talk to? If the answer is yes, congratulations, right? And in that regard, then you should probably be able to justify means of providing that value and getting compensated for that value, right? And not in like a mystical mumbo jumbo, like, oh, one day some guy is going to sponsor us or something. Like it should be, practical, you know? So it's like having a business mindset is good in terms of like systems, as you're saying, just thinking of it as a way of, okay, I'm not wasting my money here. Where's the long-term strategy going to lead us in terms of money? Because you need a camera, you want to improve, you know, and that's really the importance of the business, to say, okay, we're here right now, we're starting with this. At least in my opinion, it's like we're starting with this, but it needs to get better. I need a camera that can shoot 4K 60 frames. I need an aperture light so that we get to this level with specific reason or practical reason. And I think naturally, if you do have this sort of vision, you will just care about the business, because now you start dealing with things that naturally arise. Like now, all of a sudden, you might need a lawyer because there are certain things which provide money but are contractual, and now you need a lawyer to read the contract. But that's not something that, like, even if you try to avoid it, even if you try to say, no, I'm not going to do the business thing, it's like inevitable.
Yeah, so, it's a ceiling you just...
It's like you're gonna care about your profit regardless, because you gotta eat, right? It's like you want to work with people, but then you're gonna have to care about how much you're compensating them, how much money you make, managing them, like what their interests are, and figuring out how to build a team that all have the best interests for what's going on. It's like, it's inevitable, but I guess like it would be an advantage if you come in with that idea. Of course, like there are a lot of business things which I feel like are useless. You know, there are things which we don't necessarily need to care about. You know, like so far I haven't used the trial balance. You know, I haven't used that, right? I cash flow and income statement so far, right? But like there are certain things that maybe you'll just learn by experience. But say if you have an entrepreneur degree or a marketing degree or something, you'll be ahead of the game just by coming in with that mindset, because it changes the perspective. Some people just come in like, oh, I'm just gonna talk. It's so easy. I'm just gonna talk or what.
But why should people listen?
Even work. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, it's inevitable, and you'd rather know now than know later. Right? So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, most def. So I think right now we can just drop some of those tips for people. I said we're going to talk about monetization. Maybe let's talk about monetization first, and then we can get into those tips.
Okay, cool.
So yeah. So of course we monetize here, deep dive with the audience, with the audience, and other ways, like, you know, we sell a bit of we sell some stuff under the table. I'm joking. But anyway, I think monetization is important, obviously, just to fuel what you're doing. What are some of these ways that people can monetize? Because there's a level of creativity, especially because we're in Botswana. YouTube doesn't monetize for Botswana. Spotify, there's also those things where it tells you this region is non-monetizable. There's all these things, man. There's just all these barriers, especially for us this side.
For sure.
So what are these ways? What are ways where we can start making money from our craft? Not really boggling ourselves too much with making money from the beginning, because the money will come with the value. For sure. But how are we able to sustain what we're doing?
Yeah, so shallow ideas aside, of course, there's YouTube monetization or just platform monetization, whether it's YouTube or Patreon or what have you. That's very shallow, straightforward. Like, YouTube will compensate you for the ads that they run on your channel. The other stuff is the other shallow, just advertising straight, like having a squeeze back advert, or just saying, hey, this is sponsored by XYZ. I think a way people don't necessarily think about it is the content being created in itself is valuable. So for example, you bring entrepreneurs every single week. I think there are entities that are out there which would find interest in just having that ability to bring people, because that in itself is a skill. You know, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's celebrities, just people. So there are certain businesses that thrive off of, say, being breaking through on an entry level. They just need someone to taste test. They just need someone to maybe feel the products. Maybe they just need one piece of clothing, and then now they just want the whole piece, you know? Like maybe, for example, a suit. Maybe you just want someone maybe you just want someone to rock the blazer, and they're like, oh, this blazer is so good. Like, I love the quality of it. Now they're inspired to get like pants, the tie, the shirt, XYZ.
To get a maroon blazer.
And entrepreneurs would be very interested in getting to that part, at least in the proximity of people who are willing to buy, who also have an interest and have the money. You know, like entrepreneurs and people who are business owners who thrive off of looking like a serious business person. You know, like just from creating the content, you can just think of it like, oh, I bring celebrities here all the time. In some form, like that should have a form of value, because in itself, that's a valuable skill. Like, of course, the space in Botswana is just like, it's small, but literally there are podcasts out there who hire people just for that, just for bringing guests on or what have you. Or maybe your thing is you do events, you do podcasts at events, and you talk about the event, like you just being there and then maybe showing that, oh, this is a great vibe, or what, I'm wearing this shirt, it's going to be associated with this event. This event is prestigious, I'm wearing.
Or the venue.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, or you do a car podcast, or you're in different cars all the time. Now you're showing there's a spray bottle that cleans your windshield or something. Like just creating the content within itself, you know, can help in terms of being, bringing money, because the entities which are interested in getting to that point of just that space alone. You know what I'm saying? Like I told you, like the certain entities that want just the look of this, just the fact that it's a podcast and what have you, even though it's not technically a podcast because of the way it's being produced, like just in itself, you know, when you think about it being creative, because of course it depends on what you're actually doing, you can create value beyond the monetization on YouTube, beyond advertising, you know? And then of course, like there's the, let me say, brand incorporation, which is, say for example, you are very specific in your niche and you have a specific way of presenting yourself that can align very strongly with a particular brand. You know, maybe you do men's fashion, right? You're always talking about men's fashion, and now you create your own fashion brand. So then now it's like you are in line with the content. I mean, your brand is in line with the content, and then you're able to use your platform as a marketing strategy to promote the brand. So then now you don't even need YouTube monetization. Now it's like, it's your own brand. You already know the costs. You know it because it's your brand. And now you're giving yourself 100% of the share. Whereas if you incorporated a different brand, you would have gotten a slice, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think those are the two biggest things.
There's many ways, to be honest. Even here at Deep Dive, we got an offer. This was actually in the very few, and this is early last year when we started. You know, company approached us. They wanted to put that banner just behind us as we were shooting. So also the value of bringing influential business people on a week-to-week basis, and they're always showing up on this banner. And you know, okay, we didn't end up going with that deal because of just conflicts of interest, but it's just some of the ways that, and also one other thing is that the ways of monetization will come to you as you are running. Like you actually don't have to you don't have to think too much about it.
No,
like
for sure.
The ways will just come to you. So some of those you know, just one two tips that we could give to people that want to actually start a podcast. Okay, I'll start. Then you can.
Cool. I
so
gotta
you
think
take
about
deep
this.
breath. Like,
I gotta think
so
about
like,
this. Oh,
yeah.
I wasn't ready for this.
Yeah, so I actually have a few written down here. I think number one, you have to also be strategic about who you bring about as a guest. At least for Deep Dive, that's what we do. We try to bring people that have integrity, people that have a story that can inspire, and people that will walk the talk. You know, you can't be. I think a lot of people have approached me with ideas. Like, I have this idea, man, I'd like to be on a podcast. And I'm like, this is just an idea. You might 4 or 5 years from now, it might totally be different from what you're saying it is right now. And also just the value of business. You know, idea is just your foot in the door. Execution is the game. So you have to execute so that you also, execution means you have built value. That is why people will pay to come and listen to you speak. And then one of the other points that I have written down here is, you know, okay, we talked about marketing yourselves and actively build relationships. We talked about those. I think the other thing is, just in the podcasting space, at least for me, this is something that I'm learning. Your learning rate has to be, I think after shooting many episodes, you have to keep the fire burning for yourself, so to speak, in the sense that your learning rate, or you learning about this, the more you learn about something, the more obsessed you become about it. So your learning rate has to always surpass your implementation rate somehow. I don't know if that makes sense, but in my head, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're working more than you're learning, you're going to reach that point where you just feel like, man, is this actually, like, it's just work. So when you learn and you're actually figuring more things out, like right now, I'm figuring more things and I'm like, yo, I really have to pivot in these directions, go this way, do these things. Your learning rate also has to be that, and then your implementation also has to be that. That's why every week we have meetings and sit down and figure out how can we do this better and how can we move better. Even if people have watched this episode, I mean, it's changed over time.
Yeah,
you've seen how many things are just going on. It's changed so many times. So I think learning and implementation is a big part of it, because I think people are very intelligent. Like, they can see when you're actually invested and you're putting effort in, and when you're just like winging it, man. There are people that are actually good at winging it, to be honest.
For sure.
People just start talking and, you know, you bring people around. But a lot of people just have to continue learning and get good at what you're doing. And then the other thing is, I think starting
Can
out.
I give a tip for everyone?
Yeah. I'm bringing the tips.
Just like, because I think I'm probably gonna need to
you can
remember
go before I come in. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, first tip that I would give. You have like 5. That's crazy. You have 5 tips.
Nah, but it's actually more than 5. I'm looking at them. I'm like, hey, these are many. Let me just talk about the top 4 or 5 that I have.
Okay.
And then we can wrap it up.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'd say have a long-term strategy, like 1 year, 2 years. If your podcast isn't moving, like, just give it up. You know, it's not that deep. You tried this thing. If it's not moving, give it up. But have a long-term strategy. Don't say in 6 months it's gonna happen. That's like it's like the gym. In 3 months I'm gonna get abs. No.
Yeah.
Relax.
Yeah.
Just give it 2 years or something.
Yeah.
How long? And then it will probably move, honestly. In 2 years, I think, even if the results are not numerical, like you're not getting 100,000 a month, or you're not getting what, you'll probably feel a difference in your life that you wouldn't regret.
Yeah, there'll be a marked difference, definitely.
Yeah. I'd also say, don't think about it too much. It's not that deep. Like, if you're planning and you're thinking and you're contemplating, meditating on this idea day in, day out, like, hey, one day I'm gonna start a podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like that's your thing.
Get to it.
Just get to it. You know, like, you're thinking about it way too much, and it's not that deep. It's like anything
and to that
else.
Point, and to your point, sorry to cut you off. And to your point, that's what I actually wanted to talk about. Like, just produce. I feel like right now we haven't even produced like 100, but we're close to 100 deep dive episodes, like, cumulatively. And I think just the first 100, you just have to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Like, just produce so much that also, because experience matters a lot. When you're doing this, it matters a lot. You're not going to be good with it. You're not going to be good speaking to a camera.
Yeah.
I used to have like 8 takes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be good. So just produce volume in the beginning and don't care too much about it. Of course, follow through with yourself so that you improve every week. It's just better than last week.
For sure.
You're just getting better, but produce a lot of volume and I feel like you kind of have to get over yourself a little bit. Yeah, you kind of just have to get over yourself and just be like, you know, it's not that crazy. Like, even if I paused for 2 seconds or 5 seconds, I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
It happens many times where it's just those moments and whatever. But it's not the end of the world. You're learning this so that you can get good at this. So I think if you really have that long-term vision, it can work.
For sure.
Yeah.
My other point was gonna be, don't look for miracles. Like, bro, let's just have a practical approach to it. Don't think, oh, I'm gonna do a podcast and in 6 months some guy from, like, I don't know,
from Amsterdam,
from Denmark is gonna see it and then he's gonna sponsor it.
Yeah.
Like, don't have that. If you're thinking of it in that perspective, it's not practical enough for you to get into it, because now you're basically putting a deadline on the success of your podcast. So might as well not even do it in the first place. If you have a practical approach to it, to say, we're gonna do this for 6 months. By the end of this 6 months, we're gonna say, this is what we've done, XYZ. Not oh no, I want to shoot this now and then pitch it to people so that they pay for it. What? Like, don't pray for miracles. If you're in the position to do a podcast, do it. If you're not, you should probably do something else. You know, the universe works in mysterious ways for your least resistance in life. So if you're fighting the resistance of, I don't have money, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do it. The other things you probably should do apart from it. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a practical approach, that's very good to say, okay, no, like this isn't a miracle. We're doing this because maybe I enjoy it or because I like giving value to other people. Let's do this. Not like, oh, we're gonna get this results. I'm gonna be famous in 3 months.
Now the outcome, having predicating yourself on the outcome. It's almost like, let me give this example. I think it makes it perfect, especially for the guys. If you're going, if you're going to like a place, let's say you're going to a party and you want to talk to a female, and you're like, yo, I want to be. You know what guys think about? Today's the day. We're gonna do 1, 2, 3, and then. It never really happens like that. The outcome is never really like that.
It's
so you have to release yourself from the outcome
Yeah.
and just flow with it. And I also think a big part of it is also understanding where you are. I think that part you really have to understand, like the season you are in and where you are. For example, last year this time we're like 300 and something subs on YouTube. And right now we're like 1.45 or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's been obviously the growth it becomes exponential the more you do it, you know, and you have to understand that deeply. Like the growth becomes exponential, but also to that point you also understand your needs, because the moment you start comparing yourself, that's where you start to lose it, because you no longer build from value, you're building from competition or from whatever, because you're comparing, you're looking over this side and that side.
This guy's tall. He's gonna steal my girl.
You're gonna be like, this is what. And you have to really understand where you're going and your vision and what it means to you. Because I think a lot of people just get into the podcasting space because, I mean, it's cool for you to be known, to walk up to a place.
It's pretty sick.
It's pretty sick. Like even right now when I go to events, it blows my mind. I don't understand it. I pinch myself all the time. Every time I go to events, like, deep dive or whatever, especially business events. And so in the business niche, you know, there's 1 or 2 people that know me, but I wouldn't be known in Choppies. No one's going to stop me and be like, yo, I saw you on YouTube. No, it's not going to happen, you know?
Oh, I didn't know you eat jiggies. Like, well, me too.
It's not going to happen. And you have to understand that, and also understand the niche you're in, because also look at the content we are doing, the business content. This content you have to sit down and listen to. It's not like you know, we're not here to make you laugh or whatever.
For sure.
This content you have to sit down and understand and all that. So you have to understand that if it's like that, it probably won't do as much as the other content that will be more of entertainment and whatever. So you have to understand your metrics, understand your market and what you're doing, and just be patient with the process and enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy every time it's a Tuesday, man. I'm on a different level. Like, I enjoy this so much. So much that it's I don't even think about the outcomes. It just happens. So hey man, the future's bright. Future's bright.
And to your point, like, people don't, let me not say regular people, but like people who don't do creative stuff, they just don't understand what it's like. You know, like the idea of being known is insane, even if it's like by 3 people. You know, the fact that you're just walking around and someone recognized you it's underrated. You know,
it's extremely underrated.
And the idea that you don't even need to be a big podcast for this to work. Like, literally 500 subscribers is enough, because that's 500 different people. You know, it's like,
that's 500 people that have voted yes for you.
Like, you feel it as an individual, and that same feeling you can give it to a brand or something. Like, they just don't necessarily understand that this is a real thing. Like, you feel it because you're on every episode. If a brand also had the opportunity, they would also feel it, but people aren't necessarily convinced, which is why I say it's underrated. And like a regular person, if someone was like, oh, Gaho, you know, they would be like, they would be like, oh my gosh, why does this person know me? It's a weird feeling.
It's a weird feeling. And like, it's also amazing because it shows you the impact you're having in people's life. It's crazy, man. It's crazy how people will tell you, or they'll hit you up like, yo, who's the next guest that's coming? Who's what? And every time when we upload the trailers and stuff, like, yo, when is it coming out? Coming out? It's
like, they don't
crazy.
know, but you would know because you're the guy. But outside, like, people he just goes to Choppies like me. wakes up and yawns just like me, but it's very different, which you need to experience.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And over time you realize that it's, hey man, I don't know, you're building a brand in people's minds that they associate you with something. And then over time it just becomes, where it'll become that thing where now you just walk in any room and then people just know who you are and you don't have to introduce.
Like these people are watching you in their homes.
Yeah.
You gotta think about it.
With kids, man. They're watching you with their families,
in
man.
bed. Like people are watching you like this. That's something you gotta think about. And you don't even know these people. You could be walking around, you meet someone that just acting like they don't know you. Yeah. And they were watching you at bed last night at 3 a.m.
And you know what's even crazier? The stories you get, like when people tell you they've watched an episode and the impact it made in their lives. Yeah. It's nuts. So sure. I really think people should really. And
imagine if you were a product, of course people would buy, because they just are like, oh, I like this thing, So
it's there, we enjoy it, and also I think, I don't know if you've ever felt this about somebody you watch a lot, you feel like you know them
exactly
so much that even their mannerisms, the way they're moving, you know what,
and then you're starstruck in person.
And then when you meet them in person, I feel like that's where people get this whole, when you meet somebody you've been watching or following, they're like, they go crazy. Obviously there was just one or two people that happened to me that good. I don't know how that happened, but I think over time, when it becomes because it comes down to also networking and just building qualification, because life is just relationships.
Yeah.
When now people, it's almost like you don't have to introduce yourself, and also you don't have to make people know you. They know you already. So you're just coming in as yourself.
Yeah.
You're playing the movie of life, starring as yourself. It's I don't know anything that's even remotely close to that, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, what is your vision with Good Vision? So you let people know and how they can get in contact with you.
So Good Vision, of course, we're mainly popular for our production, but it's a content agency, so we help in developing content and being strategic with content. So some of the services we offer is content strategy, content marketing, and content production. My vision for it is to change the landscape of content. I have very strong faith in content being valuable for brands. I just don't think they're convinced, not necessarily because the arguments are off, because the arguments are tried and tested, but because maybe there's not enough proof to show that this thing is valuable.
On the ground.
Yeah, and I don't think there's been enough intention with proving that it's valuable to say, okay, I worked with the deep dive, I got them 100 clients this month just from this one video, and I prove that it's directly because whatever metric I use to show that my influence directly impacted your sales. I think I have very strong faith that that's true, that it exists. It's already tried and tested, but I want to change the landscape in that regard and take the content marketing aspect of it further. And by doing that, then encouraging more people to become content creators. Yeah. And then now it changes the landscape because there are people who are very talented, but they don't necessarily think that it's viable, from a money standpoint.
Or valuable to
people, so it's if people can see that, there's money in this, then they'll take it more seriously, and then people can be in a better position to express themselves through content. Either way, I think content is the future.
Yeah.
Or it's the present.
Most definitely it is.
It's we're fighting for attention at this point. If you see people's, what's it called? Is it the on-screen time?
Yeah,
right on their phones, 8 hours or something. Of just that day on their phone. And sometimes people might not look at themselves as content creators, but what you're doing on Instagram, posting a picture, making a tweet, making a post, sharing a meme on Facebook, you are by extension a content creator because you're creating content in a sense, and that's what's keeping people captivated. Now maybe if we were more intentional about it and we were creating stuff that was valuable, I think that would help us generally as a society, because content is here to stay. Social media is taking over, so why not produce something of value,
stuff that everyone. You want to be known about?
Example with Agatha, she does Agatha Atolang, she does health and wellness. It's that's directly helping people in terms of them learning something new, which alternatively they would have just been on Twitter or something,
exactly.
you know, consuming garbage, you know, memes and what have you. So imagine a situation where that's the thing, and now we're just helping each other by communicating, especially in, I would say, a country where not a lot of things are documented like that for people to consume and benefit off of. Just from the existence of your content, from TK, from Hana, people have been able to share their stories and help other people. So imagine a situation where we're doing that, but even more, you know, and they'll do it even more if they see that it's profitable. Right now, maybe a few clients are now making a profit, but for a long time you'll be making a loss for the longest time. Right. So
especially because it's trailblazing.
Like it's hard to say, okay, no, I want to help people in this way, knowing that you're gonna personally, you know, make a huge expense. There are not many people who are that invested to say, okay, I'll help all these people at my huge expense, you know, because it's expensive to do it. So
especially at a high level, it's expensive to do at a high level. For you to actually attract that, you know, that investment into it that will allow you to run it.
And I think the people who have the money can also mitigate the costs. And it doesn't even have to be people in Botswana, because say, for example, a country that wants to, or a product from a country that wants to market that stuff in Botswana, now they can have platforms to do so, and then now we're getting income from other countries. It doesn't have to be from each other, you know. I'm not trying to take, I need the 100 pula from Mpo. How can I figure out how to get 100 pula from him? Let me make a shirt or something. It can be something that is funded even outside but benefits people in the country. You know. So that's my vision for it.
Most def. That's lovely. And just to add to your point, there's actually real life data. There was a study that was made in the US. I'm not sure which year, but it's very recent, 2021 or 2022. But it's post-COVID, and it showed that 90% of Gen Zs are watching content made by creators. 90% of the content, let me rephrase this properly. 90% of the content that's watched by Gen Zs is content made by content creators, not mass media, not TV, nothing. Content creators. And then by extension, you know that's going to go to, that's the first word, it's going to go to all these others. It's going to come to us. So I think right now it's ripe. I mean, the marketplace is open. If you go on Spotify right now and search health podcast, there's a gajillion. And if you come to Botswana, there's probably Agatha. I don't know who else is doing that. You know, if you come to Botswana and there's business, it's me and Mr. Mokhobe. I don't know who else is doing that.
And imagine if it was more, because right now...
And imagine if there was more, because now the footprint would be more. It's more, it's like we're all like shining in the same direction. Shining our light, that means we can shine further.
Giving people advice, helping people learn, get better, you know?
And this is where
right now we're just consuming memes and funny stuff, which is cool too. But if the important things are also entertaining to captivate people's attention, then it's like, now we're helping ourselves. I almost brought up some controversial item, but I'll just vaguely say it. Vaguely. There's a country that had suspicion that another country that owned a platform was purposely making this country's content like garbage, so that they purposely basically lose their minds, don't want to be motivated, XYZ, and then the other one's content is like engineering and stuff like that. So it's like, if we, you know, we have to be careful about what we consume, because it's like food. It's like, you're gonna eat junk food, you're gonna turn into junk. You know? So
for sure, you are what you eat. Hey man, appreciate you for coming by. This man has been behind the camera for 80 plus episodes of the Deep Dive. You guys have finally seen him today. He is, as he said, the director of Good Vision. He's a creative director also here at Deep Dive, doing all these amazing things you see with the visuals, with the content that we produce. So show him some love. His links will be below. Everything will be below, including Good Vision. You guys can get in contact with him if you want to start your podcast. This is your man. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found value in this. If you have, please comment below and let us know. We actually read your comments and like this video. And if you could share it with one friend, that would be legendary. Without further ado, we'll meet same time, same place next week. Be great. Thank you guys for watching this episode. We really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Deep Dive is dedicated to bringing you the most comprehensive and engaging information about business, personal finance, and personal development. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our latest content. If you like this video, give it a like to show your support and help us reach a wider audience. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and your family who may be interested. Sharing helps us grow our community and connect with like-minded individuals. Leave a comment below and give us your biggest takeaway on this episode. If you're interested in being a part of our live studio audiences, make sure to register for the next show. Can't make it to the show? No problem. Check out our Patreon page to watch the full episode and get exclusive access to more great content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Deep Dive.